on the buying side. So we are showing a house, our buyers love it, you know it's going to go fast, or they have like a review offers by a certain time date. What do you do to get your offer accepted, basically? So that's where we'll start. I will tell you, the number one thing that you can do is just have a conversation with the listing agent. Patty held an open house for me at one of my listings this past weekend, and we ended up with 13 offers. And of those 13 offers, I can count on 3 fingers the number of people that called me to ask questions on how they can get their offer accepted. It's okay to do that. So I always like to start broad. The question shouldn't just be, hey, how many offers do you have? Which I got calls from a lot of agents saying, hey, I'm sure you've got offers. How many do you have? And then I would say, you know, as of now we have 6, or as of now we have whatever. And they would say, okay, well, I think we're going to throw our hat in the ring. I'm like, okay, great. And that would be like the end of the conversation. If you are expecting multiple offers, you can have the conversation with your seller at the time of listing that says, if we are fortunate enough to receive multiple offers, are you wanting me to disclose potential terms that could get you something better? Or do you want me to keep everything like kind of tied up in a bow? Because some sellers may not want you to disclose terms, but get that permission. But most of them will want you to do whatever you can do to get the best offer possible, right? So if you are the buyer agent and you're wanting to know how to get your offer to be the winner, just like building that rapport with me as a listing agent goes a long way, because now I can speak to your offer better than I can if I just receive it blindly in my email, right? So, you know, if Mike, you were going to send me an offer on my property and you just called me to introduce yourself, say you were going to be sending an offer, tell me about your buyers a little bit, about how, you know, we've been looking at a bunch of homes, you know, we really love this one. We're going to be submitting an offer. They're working with my preferred lender. We've got some solid financing in place. You know, we don't have a house to sell. Even though I can read all of that on paper, the fact that you took the time to call me and tell me is going to go a lot farther than if I just receive an email in my inbox. Because now I can say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this particular buyer's agent called me. They told me that they're working with their lender of choice, and their financing is really solid. They told me that they don't have a house to sell. And I was able to speak to the agent, and it sounds like this could be a smooth transaction. Yes, Mike.
So then when you're asking about terms, I know there are scripts for this. Is there anything that the seller specifically needs that I can put into the contract? But there are other conversations and other questions that can be asked when you say terms, plural. What are some of those other topics that can be asked to help make the offer potentially better?
Yep. So you can do it one of 2 ways. You can start if you know there's other offers on the table, you can start asking about the terms that already exist in some of the other offers. So if you've got maybe 1, 2, 3 ahead of you or something like that, you can say, okay, are any of those offers contingent upon the sale of another house? So start big, because those are really like broad general things that people will have no problem answering. Like, no, it's not contingent upon the sale of another house. Okay, great. Are they pre-approved with their financing, or are any of them cash offers? And then you can kind of narrow that down a little bit too. And then you can get more granular on, okay, well, are any of them waiving inspections, or are any of them asking for any closing costs or anything like that? And so you can start narrowing it down. And so if you get them saying yes to the bigger things, or no to the bigger things, answering those questions first, they'll be more likely to answer the more specific ones you have later. So that's option 1. Option 2, which is more of what you were asking about, Mike, was how do you ask about the other terms, and what are the other terms? So my first general question is, what would be important to your seller that I could put into an offer that would make ours favorable over what you have already?
Such as?
Such as, has your seller found a house that they're moving into, or do they still need time to find and identify a property to buy? Because if they still need to find a house to buy, then closing in 2 or 3 weeks is not going to be appealing. Like, so a lot of people think a quick close is what people want. But if these people are 75 years old, they need to find a patio home, they haven't found it yet, they're feeling rushed, that 2-3 week closing time is not going to be appealing to them. So asking, do your folks need to identify a place to move, or do they know where they're going yet? And then say, they've already found their house, they just need to sell this one. Okay, so would a 30 to 40 day close range, would that be about right for what your clients are expecting? And then they'll answer that accordingly as well. Vacant houses, obviously quicker closes are better. They're already gone. So closing time frame, and if maybe if they are older or downsizing or got a lot of stuff or whatever, say, would you prefer a longer close time, or would you prefer like a few days of delayed possession after we close? Which one would make more sense to your seller? So they may want to close in 30 to 40 days, but if they had like 3 or 4 days to move out afterwards, then that could also be comforting as well.
Is there a way to ask a question about price?
Yes, tactfully. So we'll start again with some of the bigger, like more generic terms like closing timeline, right? So that's something people can usually deal with. And then I'll ask about like appliances and washer and dryer, things like that. So were your clients planning on taking any of the appliances with them, or were they planning on leaving them, including washer and dryer? Because you don't want the washer and dryer term in your contract to be the only thing that like keeps yours from being accepted, right? So go ahead and ask that question. Then I'll say, other than price, are there any other terms at this point that your sellers are really particular about? They might say, we've got a contingency offer out there. We don't want a 2-week inspection period. We want to get through that as quickly as possible. So maybe do like a 7 to 10 day inspection window. Just kind of narrow those terms down. And then now that you've built a little bit of rapport, you can almost jokingly ask, well, how much do you want us to offer? And sometimes they'll actually tell you. Sometimes they'll tell you what others' offers are. I had one situation where we were competing. This was years ago. We were competing, and we were going to write an offer for much higher than what we actually ended up writing the offer for, because she told me what the other offer was. And so we wrote ours $100 higher than that one. And we got it. But, sometimes they will tell you what the prices are of the other offers if they think that you can give them something better. So does that answer your question? So
I have a question, Katie.
Yeah.
Do agents ever get annoyed if other agents call them and they start asking these questions? I mean, so from the sounds of it, excuse me, it sounds like they may welcome the questions and may welcome the interaction, but do you ever find that they get annoyed or they're bothered by it?
No, personally, I've not experienced that yet.
Okay.
Because
just curious.
It's a valid question, and I think it would be a lot more annoying if every single agent practiced this.
Oh yeah.
So I think it might sound, they might be annoyed by repeating themselves 13 times, but I don't get asked these questions.
Okay.
It is far more common to not have these conversations than to have these conversations. And so that's where I think the rapport building comes in hugely during this process. The offers that my folks ended up taking on that house on Militia, the buyers waived the inspection period. And that was the only reason that they loved that offer more than any of them. It wasn't the highest price. They waived inspections and could close quickly. And that was it. So it's hard to get your buyers to not want to do a home inspection. Excuse me, because it's very, especially if they're first time buyers. I personally would not recommend that. But you could say, we're going to do inspections, but not ask you for any repairs. And so that could help kind of be the best of both worlds. Is we still have the right to inspect, we still have the right to terminate, but we are waiving our right to ask you for any repairs to be made. We'll buy it as is.
Question, this is maybe, again, I'm on the news side, so from an ethical, is there a way to word the offer, the price offer? Have you already received offers above the list price? Is there a way to ask that without crossing that line?
No, just like that. That's a fair question. It's a yes or no question, because we owe each other as a community honesty, right? So your fiduciary duty is to your client, whoever that is, buyer or seller. But we as a real estate community owe each other honesty. So if you ask me, have I received offers that are above asking price? I will honestly tell you yes or no, depending on what the situation is. I probably won't tell you how much, but I will tell you yes, I have, or no, I haven't.
And then is it also appropriate to ask if there are any escalation clauses?
You could ask that as well. Again, I probably won't tell you the cap, but I would tell you, yes, we have received some offers with that term. And we'll talk about escalation clauses as well, and why I hate them. So before we move on to call the agent, or from calling the agent, is there any other discussion or talking points or questions around that? Make sense? Everybody gonna call the listing agent next time you're gonna write an offer, competing or not? All right, cool. So Shelly, to talk about your question with the appraisal, because that was something, I think it's a valid point. And you can tell when people have lost on multiple offers because they write stupid offers after that.
Well, even, I mean, I've had people say, well, what if I offer 20? I'm like, we're not going to do that because that isn't in your best interest. But I didn't lose this house. We had it, but I had an appraisal and we were trying to do everything right. The listing agent and I both were. It came $2,000 off. And another one that was $4,500 off. The $2,000 off, the seller wanted to kind of be difficult about it, $2,000. Mm-hmm. So I realize that that's a really tight one, but you hear these stories where people are $10,000, $20,000, between appraisal and the offer. And I mean, that's just a mess.
And I think it's, to a degree, it's irresponsible of the listing agent to be like, yeah, you should take this. Like, again, I'm going to use this last house as an example because this happened. Our list price was $160. One of the offers I received was for $197. And that is like just stupid. And I told my people, I'm like, I would love to make you $37,000 more dollars. Love it. But it's not possible. Right. There's a reason we didn't list this house at 200,000, right. It's never going to appraise. Like even the most tricked out houses in the neighborhood with the granite and the stainless and the, beautiful laminates and, all the bells and whistles were only like maybe at the 180 range. So, I told them, and I was like, anything, I love that people are trying so hard to get your house, but anything over 180 is just not it's going to cause us problems. And they agreed. Yeah. So anything that was 180 or higher, which was a few, we took off the table because we knew it was going to be a problem. In one instance, a few years ago, I had a house. Are you guys familiar with the Valley Village neighborhood off Gene Snyder? Mm-hmm. Okay. So they're pretty like standard, 3 to 4 bedroom, 1 to 2 bathrooms. Some have a garage, some don't. About 1,000 square feet, kind of little houses, right? So nothing like particularly fancy or anything special about them. But I had a seller who we listed her house right at 100,000. We knew on the high end it could probably go to 105 if somebody wanted some closing costs or something. We could negotiate that. But the offer that we received was for 110 with an escalation clause. And so I could tell that these people had lost multiple offers before because they were being super, super aggressive. And I looked at her and I was like, it won't appraise for 110. We're going to have a problem. So we countered down on that offer to 105. So she still made 5,000 more, but we countered lower than what somebody offered us because we knew we were going to run into problems. So for us on the buying side, as much as you want to try and get an offer in quickly, take a few minutes, do a quick little market analysis, look at the neighborhood, see what's selling, see, what they're selling for, and, make a responsible offer based on that. And explain that, when you call the agent and talk about your offer, say, hey, we're sending over a really, an offer that we think can make it through appraisal and actually get to the closing table. You've priced it really well, knowing it was going to be competitive. So where we think we're coming in at is going to be comfortable for all of us to see each other in about a month at the closing table. So
question.
Yeah.
And again, I apologize for my ignorance. The appraisal affects the financing portion. So if they offer higher and they put a higher amount of cash down, the appraisal only is impacting the amount that is going to be financed. Is that correct?
Yes. Now, I would say you're right, because the appraisal is only what the bank will loan them. Now, if somebody has an extra $5,000 or $10,000 to pay the difference, they can do that.
Okay.
But I would say on average, especially in, Louisville's not a high dollar market. Our average sale price is usually between $2,000 and $215,000, and that's like gone up over the years. So, you've got first time buyers that are buying houses at 140, 150, 160 with down payment assistance or minimum down or gifts from parents or things like that. They're not going to have the cash to make up the difference if there's an appraisal issue, most likely. And, a lot of buyers don't want to pay over appraised value anyway. They don't want to put themselves in an uncomfortable financial situation. If a bank's saying it's not worth it, why should I think it's worth it?
To Shelly's situation where she was $2,000 over, how do you feel?
That's just frustrating.
Well, and the selling agent was like, "Are you joking me?" I mean, we were both dumbfounded. We thought that it was a really good price. And then what was even more crazy was that the seller was kind of being a jerk about it a little bit. The one where we were $4,500 off, we're $4,500 short. The guy was a contractor. He was very gracious. He was already making more than the asking price. He just let that go. But the $2,000 one, the lady was like, oh, she wanted to renegotiate the closing costs, the down payment. I mean, she was kind of being stupid about it for $2,000.
I mean, and that's the problem with appraisal issues, is because now it opens the door for negotiations on everything again.
Yeah.
So, a seller can say, well, if I'm losing $5,000 on the purchase price, then let's talk about these closing costs I'm paying for you. I don't want to lose $5,000 and another $5,000 on, for closing costs. Or let's talk about that home warranty, or, let's talk about some of the other concessions or anything. So that's why, as best as you can, try and make a fair offer based on neighborhood comparables, so you don't run into that where the door gets opened again. I had an appraisal. I literally called the appraiser and asked if this was a mistake, because it was $900 off. $900.
But he couldn't fix it for, oh my God.
I was like, hey, I just wanted to make sure, is this a typo? Because our purchase price is $124,900 and your appraisal is at $124,000. He was like, nope, I just couldn't find $900. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You're going to make me go back to the listing agent and be like, hey, we need to reduce the price $900. I mean, it was stupid.
This, and I know I posted this on our resource page, but the appraiser did a desktop appraisal, and so he never set foot on the site, and I had to go and take pictures. They didn't accept the listing pictures, and so I'm right now. I'm just sort of holding my breath a little bit. He's never stepped foot on site, but he's about to submit the appraisal for this house. And there's just sort of that element of, it just seems like that just made something that's a little bit uncomfortable, because you sort of hold your breath with appraisals, to a little bit more uncomfortable. And they're going to have that determining factor with never having eyes on. So it's a new world. Everything's new to me, but I also understand that desktop appraisals is a whole new world too.
Well, and in the height of our shutdown, desktop drive-by appraisals, things like that were a little bit more common. I mean, thankfully, real estate and all the ancillary services around that were still essential businesses. But there was, a level of comfort where either the appraiser or the homeowner didn't want people in their house doing that work, or they didn't want to go in the house. So, excuse me. So we did see more of the desktop or the drive-bys and things like that. I would guess if it is like drastically different from your purchase contract, that you might be able to challenge that appraisal and say, because typically the listing agent and the buyer's agent agree that if we can get the appraisal to match the purchase price, that's a win for everybody. Like, nobody wants to negotiate 3-4 weeks into a contract again, and I've had buyers tell me, they're like, when an appraisal came in, this was new construction. They were buying a Homerama house, and so it had like all the bells and whistles, and there's no comps for that because it's new construction in a new neighborhood. So the appraisal came in like $20,000-$30,000 lower, and my buyers were like, we're willing to pay what we said we would pay if they can prove that the value is there. So they were fine with us challenging the appraisal, getting more, because the builder had, comps from other builders that weren't recorded on the MLS that he could turn over to the appraiser and things like that. So we did that, and it brought the value up a little bit, but it was still short. But they were more than willing to pay the agreed upon price if somebody said it was worth it. So buyers will probably be along with that too, because they don't want to risk losing the house over, something that's out of their control. So, so I would say to put a bow on the appraisal piece is, if you are on the buying side, just take a few minutes, run a quick market analysis, neighborhood search, something like that. Be smart about your offer, and then have the conversation with the listing agent. Or even explain it in your email to the listing agent when you send the offer over. Say, hey, you'll notice we're being pretty aggressive with our price. We're offering over list price. And I think we're also at a fair price that'll make sure we don't run into appraisal issues later, and we can all see each other and celebrate in 30 to 40 days. So did that answer your question, Shelley? Talking to listing agents, I think we kind of covered that, about what to ask for as far, and how to talk to them about the offers. Howie, this is your question. So I believe you mentioned, is there a way to tactfully ask them like how many offers are on the table, or things like that?
Yeah, I think you covered that really well.
Okay. So anything else you want to talk about that?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Mike, your question about following up with people on your non-winning bids. Again, the response you received was kind of interesting because when people asked me about, why their offer wasn't accepted on my last one, I told them, I said they waived inspections, and that was a big deal. And most people understand that. So, you might get a vague answer, you might get a clean answer, but I think to give some sort of answer, even if it's just like they had a few stronger terms that were favorable in regards to inspections, or concessions or something like that, I feel like is a fair and honest answer. I'm, again, the type of person that's going to be honest with every person that calls me and asks me questions. There's nothing to hide. Personally, I think the response you got was a little bit weird.
Well, quick, and you again tell me if somebody asks, if an agent asks, what can you tell me about the bid that we didn't win? Do I need to get permission first from the seller? Can I reveal this because of confidentiality, or am I just allowed to? You know, they offered full price, or they offered above full price, or concessions.
Yeah, so you can even throw out the disclaimer when talking to the other agent and say, you know, I can't get too into some of the details in case it doesn't work out, but I will just say that there were a few terms that were a little bit stronger in this offer, or we like the price that they offered a little bit better, and then just kind of leave it a little bit open, because you don't need to get like too granular. And you can throw the disclaimer of, you know, well, in case this doesn't work out, I don't want to get too detailed about it, but I will just say, you know, they net more money, or they had more favorable terms, or they waived inspections, or whatever it is. Okay. So any other questions that you've thought of since we've been talking about this on how to present or write offers if you're representing the buyer?
You mentioned escalation clause.
Oh yes, escalation clause. Thank you. And why I hate them. So here's the thing with an escalation clause is you are, one, revealing your hand to the other party. So we'll just use a nice even round number of 200,000. Okay. House is listed at 200,000. You offer 207, but you're willing to go up to 215 if you need to per your escalation clause. What you have now told me as a listing agent is you are willing to pay $215,000 for this house. So why on earth would I just not counter you and say, give me 215, right? So that's one reason why I don't like them, because it shows your hand. It shows what you're willing to do. The other reason I don't like them is, as a listing agent, it is not an acceptable contract because there is no price. So I cannot accept a contract with an escalation clause in it because there's no final price being given at time of acceptance. So you could argue, if you accept the contract as it's written, then you are accepting the price that is offered without your escalation being triggered. So if I say, yes, I accept your offer, then that could be argued that I'm accepting 207 and that's our price, even though I want it to be 210. Does that make sense? So anytime there's an escalation clause, you have to counter back with the price that you want the escalation to be. And then that leaves the door for the buyer's agent to say, you know what, we actually found another house we like better. Or we've thought about it, we don't actually want to go that high after taking some time. So anytime there's a counter, it leaves the door open for somebody to walk away. So rather than saying, I'm willing to pay this, but up to this, just have that conversation and say, what would make our offer the best? Because again, the offer we accepted wasn't the highest price. It was the one with the best terms. So we didn't trigger anybody's escalation. We didn't go nuts with our acceptance. Does that all make sense about the counter and like why it's not acceptable as it's written? There's a lot of people that love them, you know, because it's like, it shows that your buyers are serious about the house. But anybody I've ever received an escalation clause from has never once called me and asked me about what would your seller like to see in order to make an acceptable offer. So, and I mean, the other thing too is I was thinking back to that poor guy that wrote the $197,000 offer on my last listing. I mean, could you imagine being that buyer and getting the news that $37,000 above list price did not get you the house? and they probably have no idea why. That was, I don't know if that was their idea or their agent's idea, but to make an offer that high and not get it is probably very confusing to those people. But if that agent would have called me and said, hey, what do you think? I would have been like, that's awesome, but we're not going to take it because it'll never appraise. So have the conversations. That's, if you take nothing else from this class today, it's talk to the other agents. Technology makes it so easy for us to just like send a text or send an email. You know, now you don't have to hand deliver offers. So it makes it so easy for us to lose that human connection and to lose that like opportunity to have a real conversation. So don't lose out on that. Take advantage of the people that won't do that and be that person that builds the rapport and wins the offer for your client. So any other thoughts on buying?
Yeah. I have a question, Katie. Little bit of a different subject. What about when you're writing a backup offer? Okay. Are there any, I realize there's an already offer on the table, already accepted. They're waiting for, I don't know, waiting for appraisal, or not appraisals, but home inspection, financing, whatever. Anything important to know about backup offers?
Valid question. So I wrote that down on my board, so we will come back to that.
Excellent.
After the listing part of the multiple offers.
Okay.
I will talk about backup offers in this part, so it'll be a nice segue.
Good. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions on the buying side? Cool. So now you are the lucky listing agent that is fortunate to receive multiple offers. So what do you do? I think depending on the seller's circumstance, it can make some sense to say offers will be reviewed by X day, X time, or just work whatever you got when you get it. So if, for instance, you have a contingency out there on the purchase of their next house, like getting that house sold fast is more important than getting multiple offers. So, look at each seller's situation individually and decide together, does it make more sense to just work with what we get when we get it, or, wait 3-4 days, review offers all at once, and then make a decision from there. So that would be my disclaimer about that. So let's assume we waited 3 days and we're reviewing offers and we've got, 5 offers to present right now. Number one thing to make sure you always do before every single offer is explain how representation is working in that transaction through the agency disclosure form. That form tends to get missed, I think, from time to time because you're so excited to present all of the offers that you failed to tell them, well, this is somebody within my brokerage, or this is somebody from another brokerage, or this is an offer that I wrote, or something like that. So just make sure you're always taking that legal CYA step of telling them how each party is being represented in the transaction at the start of presenting each offer. Okay.
No,
so
I did fill that out correctly, didn't I?
I actually don't remember. I didn't look at it.
Okay, I think I did. I explained it to my person. Okay.
Yeah, well, I'll go back and look and let you know if you.
Yeah, make sure, please, because that was the first time I had that dual agency thing filling out. So.
If it was in the middle section on the box on the bottom where it says dual agency, then you did it right.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I didn't win, and I wasn't the 9197 either. So
you were not. She was not the 197. I would not be telling that story if it was Patty. No, that was from somebody else. So, all right. So we're the listing agent. I always also just make the disclaimer. If I'm not representing any of the buyers, I'm like, these are in no particular order. I didn't put them in any kind of like rank on which ones I think are the best or worst. They may not even be the order in which they were received. Here's the order that I've got them printed, and this is the order we're going to go in them. And so then I will clarify the blanket terms, like you got to have smoke detectors in the house per this ordinance. It's got to be clean at the time you close, so all the things that will apply to every single one. You got to have clear title, things like that. And then I'll just go through terms in order that they appear in the contract. Okay. Offer one, they want your kitchen appliances to stay. They're offering $170,000. They're putting down 10%. They're financed with ABC Bank. They're not asking for a home warranty. They're asking for $4,000 in closing costs, and just kind of go through and then I'll tell them about inspections and possession before closing costs. So basically we'll run through each one pretty quickly, so that way they can get like a general idea. Usually they'll just write down what each one is, and then if there's any we want to remove from the table, we'll take those off, and then we'll focus in on the ones that are left, and I'll do net sheets, and we'll talk about what each of the terms actually means. Like, well, what does it mean when they say they want inspections in 10 days? Well, that means we'll know within 10 days whether they're moving forward or asking for repairs or bailing, so we'll get a little bit more granular on that. I think it's important as well to relay anything that you've learned about the buyer to your seller at this time. So through the conversation that I had with Mike at the beginning of this, when he called me about his buyer, saying that they had no home to sell and they're pre-approved with his preferred lender, and whatever else you told me about him, I can say, and I spoke to this agent. He reassured me that the lender that they're working with is somebody familiar to him. So it's not like they found him on Google. It's a solid financing program, things like that. You're muted, Mike.
Yeah, I did Rocket Mortgage, stuff like that. I've heard about those conversations.
Yep. And then we just weigh the pros and cons. If there's two offers that are exactly identical, but one's FHA and one's conventional, I'll tell them about what each lending program means and how that can affect them, and let them make the decision. The most important thing is I will not input my opinion at this point until it is asked for. Right now, I'm just purely a fact giver. So I will say, here's what offer one is, here's what offer two is, here's what offer three is, here's what offer four is. What are your thoughts? And then they might be like, well, I don't like offer one because it's lowest, and I don't like offer three because they have a house to sell and it's not listed yet. So let's work with 2 and 4. And then we'll clarify the terms a little bit deeper. And then at that point, they might ask me what I think. So then again, I'll go back to facts. Well, offer 2 will net you this amount of money. Offer 2 means their inspections will be done within this time frame. Offer 2 has this down payment, so we know that they're a little bit liquid. It's a conventional loan, and then just compare apples to apples. So then again, they make their own decision, because I never want to be the one that's guiding them towards a particular offer based on what I would do, because it's not my house and it's not my money. And I never want anybody to think like, well, you just want me to take the highest offer so you get more commission. No, I want you to take the one that you're the most comfortable with based on all the terms. Okay. Now, I think a best practice is, and it can be tedious, it's formally rejecting any offer that you don't accept through signing a rejection. It was not fun to put 104 signature blocks on 13 offers, but I did it because I never wanted any of the agents that took the time to write an offer for our house to think that their offer was not received and presented. So there is 100% evidence to back us up that their offer was presented and they just chose another offer. Does that make sense? Because it's especially
Yes.
especially if you work with investors a lot, because a lot of investors will write lowball offers that, are insulting. And so if you take the time to reject the offer in writing, you can prove to that buyer agent that you presented their insulting offer and the seller didn't want it.
Well, yours was the first one I have ever received. And I had another client that I sold a house to, and unfortunately she was doing the whole J-Town thing and we were not getting the houses because we were standing in line with everybody else to look at the houses. And so you can imagine. And literally from the 4 offers there that we put in, not a single one sent a rejection back. Now they emailed to say that we did not take it, but not a single one sent a rejection back. Yours was the first one I've seen.
Yeah.
I sold her a house someplace else, but
Oh, good.
so, but like I said, I had not received that.
Yeah. And a lot of people won't. You just get the email that says, thank you for your interest. We've decided to go with another offer. And,
Okay.
I appreciate the communication at least, because leaving me hanging is worse than not receiving anything. But I always make it a practice to reject any offer we don't accept. So that way I can show with absolute clarity and certainty, your offer, you took the time to write it. Here's proof that we took time to review it. And thank you, but we decided to go another direction.
So just for clarity, as many signatures as you referenced over for 13, they don't just reject on the final page. They have to do initials on every page, just like if they were to accept it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And an agency form with each one of them, so they knew how all the parties were being represented. So it's 7 signature blocks or 8 signature blocks per contract. So it's all, and if there's a spouse involved, then yeah, twice as many blocks to add. But I think it's a good professional practice if you take the time to do that. Because again, it shows that you did take the time to present their offer. There's no question that their offer was received. And it's just, again, kind of a cover your butt situation. So if you, and this will tie into what Shelley was asking about with backup offers, is maybe you only have 2 offers on the table. So we're not like competing with the rest of the industry. You've got 2 that you're looking at and you decide to accept the one, and the other one's really not bad either, but you just like the one that you picked a little bit better. You could counter, instead of just straight rejecting it, you can counter the second offer and make it a backup offer in case offer 1 doesn't work out. And that will save your seller a lot of time, especially if they live there, from putting it back on market, having showings happen again, taking the time to go through all the offer writing process when you've got something solid that you could take as a plan B if plan A doesn't work.
What would that look like? How would the wording be, a counter as a backup?
So it's very similar to the counter or the language that you would write in an offer that you were presenting. So there's boilerplate language. I can put it in the chat box here in a minute, so that way you can copy and paste it. But it's basically like, this offer is subject to the release of a previously submitted as a backup offer and subject to release of any previously accepted offers. It gives your buyer the right to continue to shop for property. It says that if your buyer finds something acceptable before this offer becomes priority offer, that they can terminate, receive their good faith money back. So I will find that here in a second and I will put it in the chat box. But that's a step a lot of people don't take, that I think could save your sellers a lot of time. If there's a second offer that they really, really liked, but you can't accept 2. So might as well keep the other one around for backup, because that buyer could, look at 4 or 5 more houses, get rejected 4 or 5 more times. But if you can't work something out on the inspections, then they're first in line for a house that they were interested in. So it's a good tactic. offer. If you're writing it, if I've written, or if one of my offers is rejected, and I get that rejection email from the listing agent, I will say, well, will they consider a backup offer? And I will send over a backup offer in case, especially if it's like a unique property and like it's a hard to find price point in a certain location or something like that. I want to make sure if something doesn't work, I'm first in line. So I would, if it's a really special situation like that, I would always make it a habit to be like, do you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, do you want to be a backup offer in case this one doesn't work? It doesn't prevent you from shopping. It doesn't prevent you from making another offer somewhere else. It just means if something falls apart there, you're first in line.
I apologize for asking this.
No, stop apologizing.
Well, I feel like because I'm the newbie, I'm asking questions that I should already know, or that everybody, this backup offer, is this something that you rewrite the whole contract or offer and submit it as a backup? Is there a special form? I've got more to learn about backup offers. So I'm just.
It's just in other provisions.
Other provisions? Okay.
Yep. Let's
Thank
see.
you.
Practice contracts. I think I found my backup language here.
Hey, Mike, thanks, because I'm asking the same questions in my head, so.
No, ask them out loud. All right. Use in other provision, you'll put your same offer that you want to put together to them, and then in other provisions, you will copy and paste this language right here. All right. So there's your backup offer language in the chat box. And then if you are the seller side and you want to counter an offer to make it a backup, just counter with this language. And unless you want to change other terms, you can counter with this language, counter the price, counter whatever. But assuming you want to keep all the other terms that they submitted, just counter with this language. And if they accept your backup, accept backup offer, then you got that. Does that make sense? Any questions about the verbiage of the backup offer? Yes.
Okay. So with the backup offer, they still have to give earnest money.
Correct, because it is technically an accepted contract.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Yes, it is an accepted contract. So the earnest money timeline is still applicable. Now,
Okay.
if they terminate because they find another property, just transfer it to the new property. You will already have it. So you can show the agent, and here's our earnest money. We've already got it deposited.
Right.
And then you would just let Lisa know here in the office and say, hey, the earnest money for 123 Main Street is now being transferred to 456 Oak Street. And she can notate that in the file. So. Good question. Any other questions around the verbiage? Okay, so that's backup offer language. What other burning questions do you have around presenting multiple offers to a seller as the listing agent?
So just hypothetically, your seller says, we're going live Friday. We're going to make a decision Sunday by 5.
Mm-hmm.
You put it in the agent notes, but you get that offer that says deadline is Saturday by 6 p.m. I mean, the buying agent did what the buyers wanted, and they submitted an offer that is forcing your sellers to make a decision early. So now sellers either agree to entertain that offer because I have to present it, and then they decide what to do. Have you encountered that scenario, and what do you suggest?
I have encountered that scenario. You're right. You do have a legal obligation to present the offer. What I will tell the agent as I receive it is, I received your offer. Did you see the agent note that indicated that we are not presenting offers until Sunday? And you will be shocked at how many agents don't read. So, like, agent notes is like the first place I go when I schedule a showing, because I want to know what's happening. Like, I want to know if there's something else that I need to bring to the attention of the buyers. But you will like be amazed at how many people don't read. And so sometimes it could be a legitimate mistake. Be like, oh, I didn't notice that. I'm so sorry. Like, I had one of those on my militia one where I was like, we aren't reviewing offers until this time because the sellers are out of town. And he was like, oh yeah, that's right. I got it confused with another listing. My people are fine with the time extending to the time you're reviewing an offer. So sometimes it's an honest mistake, or just a mistake. Maybe not honest, but a mistake. Oh, a kitty. Other times, it's an uncomfortable spot to be in as a buyer, because you're buyer's agent, because you're kind of powerless. On the one hand, you want to do what is best for your seller or for your buyer client by trying to force a response. But on the other hand, the risk is you aren't going to get a response and you're going to be forced to wait with everybody else. And so me personally, as a listing agent, if I have put it out there that I am reviewing offers at this time with these and offers to be submitted at this time, I'm going to honor that word that I put out there, because the MLS is just an advertisement, but I've told the world that this is what we are doing. And if all things are going to be equal within the community, I'm going to honor what we put out there in fairness. To accept something sooner would, in my opinion, cause some kind of ethical dilemma of saying, hey, you told us we were going to be doing this, and then you did something else. And I feel like it could open a door to complaints, and to me, that's not worth it. Say, I'm more than happy to present your offer with everybody else's. You can resubmit it with a new timeline, but I will present it now because I have it, but understand that my sellers are most likely going to reject it because we have a time that we're going to be reviewing all offers. Amy, do you have anything since you popped back in?
Sorry, I'm packing for the lake, so I'm in and out. And you may have already said this. Have you addressed the response time that you give when you're presenting an offer, and the fact that it can be withdrawn? That has worked in my favor and outside of my favor as well. And I'm not sure if you'd already talked about that.
No, but I do have some stories about rescinding offers. Yeah, I mean, that's always a risk too, is you can risk losing a solid offer because they don't want to wait. So that's why there's kind of a risk reward to saying all offers to be reviewed by X day at X time, because you can't guarantee you're going to get offers by X day and X time. There was one I was convinced was going to have multiple offers. And after the first showing on Friday, this agent was like, well, we're going to send over an offer. I'm like, okay, well, did you see the note about being reviewed Sunday at 4:00 or whatever? And they're like, well, we don't want you to use our offer as leverage, so we're not going to make an offer right now. And I was like, oh,
wow.
Yeah. And so they ended up making an offer on Sunday and were my only offer. So I would have been just as fine to take the one that they wrote, we're going to write on Friday. But, so that's where there's kind of a risk reward is, are you sure you're going to get multiple offers, or are you just hopeful you're going to get multiple offers? So that's why, having that conversation with the seller on the front end is like, okay, how would you like to handle this? Do you just want to take them as they come in, or do you want to try and get as many as possible. And if you get as many as possible, losing the one may not be heartbreaking, but losing the one that's the only one is heartbreaking.
So when you're representing the buyer, especially in this seller's market, how much response time do you give for them to get back if there's not a multiple offer situation?
That's a great question to ask the agent when you call them and talk to them. Because I hate personally when somebody gives me a really tiny, narrow window to respond. And that's not because I'm trying to drag this out as long as possible, but you know, we have appointments that we go on. We have times when we're not available to meet. Sometimes the sellers are older and need a face-to-face meeting, you know, and for somebody to be like, I need you to respond to me in 2 hours, that's impossible sometimes, you know. So I'm glad you brought that up. So in the question one of the questions that you ask when you call about the offer situation is, when are you able to get with your sellers to present this offer? Because I don't want to lose a house because I put an unrealistic deadline to respond to. And if, you know, again, agent notes is if I've got that situation where they are elderly or out of town or maybe out of state or there's multiple decision makers or something like that, I will say, please give me 24 hours to respond because I need time to talk to these people. You know, I like to stop working at a certain time at night. So if you send me an offer at 7:30 at night, but want me to respond by 11 p.m., I'm going to be mad at you because that's times where I'm like trying to wind down and I don't want to be, you know, working at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. You know, that's me personally. So ask that question saying, you know, when are you meeting with your seller to review offers, or when can you sit down with your seller to review this? Because I want to give you a response time that is quick, but also reasonable.
Your schedule is going to be changing drastically in a couple of months.
Yes, which is why I will not be working in a couple of months.
You may find that at 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. may be a very active time for you.
Yes.
All offers come in between 2 and 4. That's what a.m.
Yes. Please schedule these for the earliest possible hours in the morning.
That's right. In between feedings.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. But yeah, so the other downfall is, like Amy said, is, you know, people can withdraw offers in that time. So if I get an offer on Friday, but it's not being reviewed until Sunday, that's a lot of time for that buyer to find another house that they like. Mm-hmm. And they can pull their offer off the table. Not as heartbreaking when you've got 10, but really heartbreaking when you've got 1. So, you know, again, risk reward. So decide what the best strategy is for your seller's situation and do what's best for them, not what you think is best for you, not for ego. You know, don't be like, don't do it for the social media post that says, oh, we got 27 offers on this house. You know, do it because that's what the best situation is for your seller. You know, there is absolutely no shame in posting saying, hey, it took us a week to get an offer on this property, like, but we sold it. And because we sold it at the right terms and the right price, that made sense for my seller. So don't compare your insides to outsides, and don't do it for the social media glory of being like, I'm the best. I got 27 offers on my listing. So, a couple other points since we got a few minutes. A very controversial topic in multiple offer situations is writing a letter to the seller. I want to address that. If somebody sends me a letter, I will not read it and I will not give it to my seller for a couple of reasons. And I didn't used to be this way. So this is an evolution of mindset for me. So number one reason, and the hot topic reason, is a fair housing issue can be brought up when you write a letter to the sellers. How could there be a fair housing issue, you say? Because there's multiple protected classes, one of which that seems to get forgotten is familial status. And it is almost impossible to write a heartwarming letter to the seller without saying, my kids love the backyard, or, something along that line. So now you've disclosed that you are a family of however many people you are, and it could be argued that that offer was accepted because of the 2.5 kids and the dog versus the single guy who doesn't have the cute family picture and the cute dog. So, and again, it's the seller needs to make a decision based on logic, not based on emotion. And you don't want your seller to go to bed that night thinking, I just left a single mom homeless because I didn't accept her offer and I accepted the one that net me more money. Am I a bad person? Am I greedy? That's not an emotion the seller needs to have. The seller needs to celebrate the fact that they sold their home, they accomplished their goals, and not freak out about the fact that they, left somebody on the streets, so to speak. So don't write them. Again, this is a mindset shift for me because I have written them in the past or helped write them in the past. I have presented them in the past, and there was a situation where that exact scenario I described about the single mom, they accepted her offer over the one that was probably better based on terms, but they felt their heartstrings were pulled by the single mom, the veteran single mom who wanted their house. So leave the letters out of your offer and make it purely about business and terms. And don't open yourself up to liability if somebody does want to claim a fair housing violation. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In general, this isn't necessarily multiple offer related. I want to give you the power of rescinding offers. This is a tool in your tool belt that you may or may not know about or have used before, but it's really super awesome if you ever get to. It kind of makes you feel like a baller sometimes. So I'll share two quick stories, one of which where I was on the buying side and one of which I was on the listing side. So we'll start with the listing side. I had a listing in Bedford, Kentucky. Okay, so it was a cute little house, but the market's not quite the same in Bedford as it is here in Louisville. So showings weren't as frequent, and we certainly weren't getting multiple offers. So when we did have a showing take place, we'll say one Friday afternoon, for instance, the buyer liked it. Buyer wanted to think about it. Buyer slept on it for a couple of days. Buyer decided she wanted to make an offer. Well, magically, we got a showing from a second person the day our offer was supposed to be responded to. So I called the listing agent and I said, hey, buyer agent. I said, hey, buyer agent, just so you know, we have an offer on the table that we have to respond to at noon and your showing's at 11. So if your folks have any interest at all, please let me know ASAP. And she said, absolutely, we will, blah, 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 blah. So in the meantime, I have offer one on the table, which was fine, but not great. We weren't going to accept it. We were going to counter it no matter what. So we went ahead and drafted up our counter offer just in case buyer number 2 didn't like it, right? So buyer number 2 calls me at 11:30 or something. They're like, we love the house. We're going to make an offer. Here's what it's going to be. It's going to be full price and which is way better than what I had. And I would absolutely have loved to work with that offer. But I did not have it in my hands yet. So I was not going to risk losing buyer number 1 for mythical buyer number 2 at this point, right? So we went ahead and drafted our counter offer, sent our counter offer at 11:58. So like right before our deadline to respond.
Hmm.
Gave her all the time in the world, like 24-hour plus to respond, because we didn't want her to be like, make a decision right now. To think that she had all the time in the world to respond. So I said, actually, Taylor, Steve was the agent for buyer number one. So I love this story.
That's great. I love that.
So I told Steve, I said, hey, Steve, here is our counter offer. You know, we gave you 24 hours to get back to us. Let us know if you have any questions, blah, 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 blah. So because again, I didn't want to lose buyer number one in case buyer number two never came through. And at least if buyer number one accepted it, it would be terms that we liked. And either way, it was a win for us, right? So then buyer number two submits their offer while my counter offer's out there. And it's exactly as I described, full price, better terms, such and such. So I get to call Steve and email Steve and I say, we received a better offer. We're pulling our counter offer off the table. And he was so shocked. It was great. But you can do that. As long as an offer has not been accepted, you have the ability to pull it back off the table if you find something better or your seller gets something better or whatever. So and accepted does not mean signed by the other party. Accepted means delivered and in your inbox again. So even if buyer number one had signed an acceptance, but it had not come back to me, I still had the ability to take it off the table. Does that make sense? So you can leverage them against each other if you need to, but don't let one go away because you're expecting something and then you maybe never get it. So if that situation arises, you have the ability to work them both carefully. But as soon as you get something in writing better than what you've got out there, pull off the one that you don't like and work with the one that you do.
Hey, Katie, I would also say that one thing that I had to manage expectations with the buyers is that if we were given that time frame to respond, don't wait until then.
Take the whole time. Yeah.
Right. And I think that they just think, well, that's common, you know, because they're giving me that response time, I should take it. I really, especially in a seller's market, had to say, oh no, they can rescind that counter offer, just like you described. And if you already know in your heart of hearts, this is the one, we don't need to wait for that. We don't want another offer coming in that maybe the seller doesn't know about.
Yep. So absolutely don't use your entire response time if you can avoid it. You know, sometimes if it's a short window or overnight or something like that, you got to do what you got to do. But if you get the counter offer and the buyers are like, yeah, that sounds good. Don't be the agent that's like, okay, well, we've got till 10 o'clock to accept this. So I'm going to go have dinner and I'll get it to you when I'm done, and risk losing that house for your client because you knew you still had time.
That's right. And I would also add, adversely, if you have a buyer who wants to make an offer and that you've reached out to the agent and they said that they already have received an offer and they're negotiating it, sometimes that listing agent may be a little newer and not realize that they can rescind that counter offer. I've had it where I've said, well, do you have, so it's not executed yet, you just put the counter offer there. And they said, yeah, but we're working with them. I said, well, what if we were to present 5,000 over list? And she had to call her broker and make sure, but came back and sure enough, she said, yeah, if you can get that in my hands, we'll pull our counteroffer. So use that as your negotiation tactic, but keep in mind that maybe that other agent doesn't realize that they can pull that counter.
Because people use the word contract too loosey-goosey.
Yep.
So contract is not, it's not a contract until it's fully executed and delivered by all parties. It is an offer until that point. So a lot of agents will say, well, we've got a contract out on this right now, and then shoot themselves in the foot because what they actually have is an offer right now.
Yep.
So use your words carefully and clearly when communicating. especially in a situation like this where you could, you know, I could maybe send a better offer, but because you told me you had a contract on it, I think it's sold already. So watch your language. Rescind story on the other side is, this was a few years ago and obviously not in the market we're in right now. So we could counter back and forth a couple of times and still not worry about the deal dying. I had the buyer. We made an offer on a property. The seller countered us. We countered back. I think the seller countered us again. And I think we countered one more time. I don't know. There was a couple of back and forth. But the point is, the last, however many counter offers there was, the last offer that the seller had sent to us, we responded before our timeline to respond, like by several hours. The listing agent calls me and she says, I don't know if anything's going to come of this. She's like, but there's some people coming out today to look at the house for the third time. I don't know if they'll make an offer. I just want to let you know that they're coming back out today for the third time. So I called my client and I said, hey, this is what I've learned. It doesn't mean that there's an offer in the hand. Doesn't mean there's gonna be an offer in hand. But if they're coming back for a third time, they're probably pretty interested. So what would you like to do? So we ended up pulling our counter offer and just accepting their counter offer because he was like, well, if they make an offer, it's going to drive the price up probably than what we're at right now. I said, you're probably right. So because we were still in our deadline to respond to their counter offer, we pulled ours off and then just returned an acceptance back to them. So another benefit to responding early if you're negotiating still is you could still change your mind and be like, you know what, we changed our mind. We actually want to accept it. We're still within our deadline to do so.
Katie, just for clarity, are you saying that, and my understanding is that anytime that you counter an offer, you're rejecting the one previous.
Yes.
But are you saying that you guys submitted a counter and then you withdrew that counter and then just went with accepting the one that was rejected and countered?
Well, yes, so we'll just use we'll put some numbers to this and it might make it a little bit easier. We'll say we offered 300 and we'll say the sellers countered at 310 and then we countered at 305. But then I get the call that says we have the third showing. And so instead of waiting for them to see if they'll work with our 305, we just said, you know what, we'll take your 310 because we pulled our counter offer, which was rejecting their counter off the table and accepted their counter to us.
So would they, and I'm asking just that I got clarity on how, how this is happening. When you all made your counter offer at 315, you rejected the 310. So they weren't obligated any longer to honor that as long as they had that in writing. So did you go back and say, hey, we want to rescind the counter and accept the 310? Will they work with that? And if they agree to that,
well, I'm within the timeline. So if I send them an acceptance to their counter offer to me, then I'm golden because I was rejecting them, but now I've come back and accepted them. So I pulled my counter and said, here, we're going to take what you gave us this last round instead of trying to nickel and dime here. So we just accepted the offer that they proposed to us versus trying to counter it. So that's how we ended up getting into that property at probably a better price than what they almost could have gotten, than what it could have been. Because if we were in a bidding war, then it would have driven it up. So because I was still within my deadline to respond. Now, if I'd passed my deadline, I couldn't do that anymore. So I would have had to have written basically a whole new offer with their terms for them to accept. But because I was still within my timeline to respond to their counteroffer, I could pull my counteroffer off and just accept theirs instead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I follow you. I know that what they taught us in school is that when you, and we went to the same, but when you counter, you have officially rejected theirs. And
Correct.
so, but you're saying that the time frame has an impact.
Well, yes, because they officially rejected our offer and said, we don't want this, but we will accept this, right? So when I send the counter, I'm saying I reject that, but we'll take this. But when I pulled my counter off the table, that whole rejecting piece goes away now. I'm looking at the offer that they presented to us, and I'm saying, I accept
Okay.
what you said.
Because they have not accepted your counter.
Right. They didn't accept our counter. They didn't respond to it. They hadn't done anything with it yet.
That makes sense. Thank
It
you.
was just out there for them. And then we're like, you know what? We don't want to risk somebody else coming in. So instead of you responding to our counter, we're just going to take what you gave us last time.
I got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. So use that. It is absolutely legal for you to rescind an offer. You don't have any special form to sign. It's just literally a text or an email to the agent saying, we rescind our offer. Do something in writing.
Right.
Probably good to call them too, but do something in writing that says we are rescinding our offer or counter offer or whatever. So there's some sort of paper trail. So we have 5 minutes left, right? No, 9:30 to 11:30?
You're in charge.
Okay, we don't have 5 minutes left. We have 35 minutes left.
However,
But 11 was in my mind for some reason, so I was trying to keep it within that. But what, in regards to offers, writing, making, presenting, etc., what else has come into your brain since we've been talking?
Okay, so I have a question. In this market, how crucial is it to ask or not to ask for a home warranty? So I realize if you don't ask for it, it's a cleaner offer, possibly more attractive to the seller. But that's something that I've struggled with too, because my team leader's like, no, ask for the home warranty. And I'm like, well, but what if there's a better offer? Or what if there's an offer that's more attractive that hasn't asked for the home warranty? And they pick that because of that $300 home warranty.
So this is where it's all of the decision of your buyer client. So just explain the pros and cons of each. So you sit down with your buyer to write the offer, and you get to that term and you say, okay, so here's what a home warranty is. Here's about how much it costs. Understand that if we're competing, it's going to be, $400, $500, $600 less that the seller nets as a result of that. But if it's something that you feel would bring you comfort in having, we can put it in there. You also have the right to purchase it yourself if you'd want. And some people might do that. Some people might opt to, be like, you know what, it's $400. I'll buy it myself if that means we can get the house. But ultimately, it is a decision of your buyer on whether or not they're comfortable waiving it. Especially if you are looking at a house that maybe has 10-year-old plus mechanicals, that might not be something they're willing to waive because of the age of everything that's there. And then maybe you could offset it by raising your price $500 extra or something like that, just to compensate. But I explain the pros, I explain the cons, and it's their decision on whether or not they want to get it.
Would you say the same conversation with concessions? Because concessions, you could be talking multiple of thousands of dollars. And I understand the pros and cons about strengthening and weakening your offer, but when first-time buyers, many times they want to ask for, do you have a script? Do you have something that helps at least them or a guide they want all concessions, half concessions, just your thoughts on that.
So that's where the relationship with the lender will come in handy. whether it's the one you use all the time or it's a new one. You know, if it's a new one, make the introduction and say, hi, you know, my name's Katie. I'm with Keller Williams. I'm working with Amy to help her buy her home. We haven't had the opportunity to work together yet. So I just wanted to learn a little bit about the loan and make sure when the time comes to make an offer, we're all on the same page. So tell me a little bit about the loan. Are they getting FHA? Are they getting conventional? You know, could it go either way? Just kind of ask that question. Closing costs and prepaids. You know, what are we looking at? Is that something that they have the ability to cover, or are we going to need to ask for the seller to pay for those in our offer? And the lender will be able to tell you for sure, you know, what their financial situation is, and also can help you negotiate any fees, like closing cost fees. Like they might be able to offer lender credits or things like that. So have that conversation with the lender prior to making the offer and saying, hey, we're really into this house. We're going to offer 160. If I know you mentioned they need the seller to pay all the closing costs and prepaids. Is $5,000 enough? Not enough? Too much? Is there any room to negotiate there? Because I know we're going to be competing and I want to be as strong as possible. And see what the lender can do to work those costs down to like the lowest amount that you can get away with. But, you know, if your buyer needs them, they need them. Especially in that first time buyer range. You know, it's a common thing. I prep my sellers for it. I said, you know, this 200 and under price range, there's a good chance we're looking at first time buyers with minimum down. Probably going to need some closing cost assistance. So just be prepared to see that in offers. So they know my sellers know it's usually coming. And then it's more of a like awesome surprise when it's not included in an offer. So.
Hey, Katie, you know, I'm recalling years ago when I was brand new and I had no idea what went into closing costs. So it might be good just to kind of revisit that,
Yeah.
what that consists of.
Yep. So your closing costs and your prepaids are your costs to get the loan. So it's the fees to the lender, which some lenders have the ability to negotiate their own fees to make your closing costs more aggressive. It is the fee to the title company for preparing the documents for the closing. It is your owner's title insurance policy. So to protect the buyer from any potential liens or title defects that were missed by the title agent when they were before closing. It is deposits into your escrow account for your homeowner's insurance and your property taxes. So those initial deposits go in. It's recording fees, flood certification fees. Some lenders roll the appraisal into closing costs. If you're doing a VA loan, sometimes there's VA funding fees. So it's a bunch of just some miscellaneous fees to get the loan, basically. A good rule of thumb for like, maybe I would say 250 and under is closing costs and prepaids are going to be about 3% of your purchase price. So you can do the math based around that 3% number, and anything that you can shave off of that is going to be beneficial. Steve shares a story with us sometimes about when he was a newer agent and he was losing offers left and right because they were throwing closing costs to be paid by the seller in there because he just thought that would be a great service. You know, he thought it would be great if he could get the seller to pay the $5,000. And then when he sat down and actually asked the buyer about it, they're like, oh no, we don't need that. We can pay our own closing costs. Then all of a sudden they got their offers accepted because it wasn't that they needed it. He just thought it would be good to get it covered. So have that conversation. Like, do you genuinely need all of this help, or do you have $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 extra that you can use towards your closing costs and prepaids to make us more aggressive?
I would say the verbiage that you put in the provisions when you're asking for it is pretty crucial as well. I don't know what camp you're in, Katie, but I was always in the one that said that the seller shall pay closing costs and prepaid items in the amount of, rather than up to. Because if you say up to, then if the closing costs just ended up being underneath that, that's all the seller's going to cover. But if you give a solid amount and say that it's not all needed, you've just won a couple of $100 or just a little more for your buyer. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I put my verbiage in the chat. So if anybody wants to steal that, you can. Up to, I think, might bring a little peace of mind to sellers, sometimes thinking like, hey, you know, they're asking for 5,000, but if it's 4,700, then we might make 300 extra bucks. In my experience, lenders have a tendency to squeeze every penny out of a seller that they can. So even though it says up to $5,000, they will find $5,000 somewhere. So, because the sellers agreed to pay for it. Mm-hmm. So I have no strong opinions about it either way necessarily, but you know, it might bring some peace of mind if you're competing to put up to, if the sellers might think, well, they're asking for 5,000, but you know, it's possible that it's less. Like, it's possible, but don't bank on it, you know, because like I said, very rarely will I see a lender like actually agree to the up to part. They'll just put the whole 5,000.
Right. I would also share a lesson learned for me in the beginning, that if you are asking for seller concessions, you have a maximum depending on the type of loan. And I'm a little far removed now, so please correct me, Katie, if I'm wrong, but if it's a conventional loan, it can't be more than 3% of the price. FHA, it can't be more than 6%. And I believe that VA and maybe USDA are 3.5 or 4%.
I had a VA one where she said I could get up to 6% recently.
Okay. So maybe that's a little lax, or it depends on the lender. Mm-hmm. So I just, you know, I learned the hard way because I had put that in there and they accepted, and I just thought it was a done deal as far as the concessions goes. But the lender called me later and said that we were going to be $1,200 short because of the maximum allowed. So just make sure that you're having that conversation with your lender.
Yeah. Again, if you take nothing else from this, talk to people. Communicate with people.
You know, and I'm, if you don't mind, I'll switch gears too. And I know you kind of touched on it earlier, and maybe you went further in depth, and I'm sorry I wasn't here for it, but the waiving inspection versus waiving repairs. Did you speak to that at all, and how there's a dilemma there as far as Brad Long is concerned if you go the first way?
Well, I don't know Brad Long's dilemma. So what's Brad Long's dilemma?
Well, what he seems to have the most trouble with is if an agent says we're going to waive inspections. He says never do that. And Patty, I believe that you were in his repair requests class, and you might have heard a little bit more detail on this. So it puts you in a liability spot if you say we're waiving inspections. It's much more powerful if you say we're going to have an inspection just for peace of mind, but we're going to waive our repairs.
I just put language in the chat box for if you want to waive repairs. Buyer retains all rights set forth in paragraph 10B2. However, buyer understands property is being sold in as is condition. Or you can say, however, buyer will accept property in as is condition. So you still have your inspection paragraph rights. You can inspect, you can terminate if you don't want to move forward as a result of that, but you aren't asking for repairs to be completed. I will put that in other provisions if it's explicitly says property is being sold as is, like if it's an estate or whatever investment, but my folks still want to inspect. I will put that language in other provisions. And you can tweak it just a little bit to say buyer retains rights set forth in paragraph 10B2. However, buyer will accept property in as is condition or something like that. Or buyer will not ask for repairs or something along those lines if you're doing it to be competitive.
Now, if you're doing that or accepting an as-is in the case of a foreclosure, I can tell you that personally, I have done an inspection on a foreclosure, and those are usually an as-is, but I communicated with the bank, just like you said, you have to talk to people. And I let them know, it was an AC, an air conditioner that was cracked outside. And they said, you know what, we will put some money in there. So I guess what I'm saying is, even though if you see as is, especially with a foreclosure, it doesn't hurt to reach out and say, hey, I know this is as is, but we just got our inspection back and this is what we're looking at. Because if they think that any buyer that comes along is going to have that same issue and it's going to hold them up and they're going to be sitting on that property, they might be willing to invest in it.
Yeah, and some banks are nicer than the others.
Yeah, exactly.
Some, like I did that recently with a HUD deal. And I was like, hey, I know it's as is, but we had some things pop up on the inspection. Or, is there any way that you would work with us on this? And they're like, no, the only money we'll spend is if it's been vandalized prior to closing. But I have had other banks make repairs because at the end of the day, like, it's their asset. And if they're not going to make money on it because the property is deteriorating based on a roof leak or termites are eating it alive or something, it's in their best interest to work with you on something like that. Also, just because you waive repairs doesn't mean you waive the right to ask for money. So sometimes I will put like, we're buying as is, but we won't ask for repairs. But then something comes back and we're like, hey, so apparently your crawl space is covered in mold. We're not going to ask you to fix it, but do you mind giving us like $2,000 or something? And that can work too. So just because you're not asking for them to make the actual repair, you don't have to give up your right to negotiate, period.
Just make sure that you don't say in the addendum in lieu of repairs. Underwriters do not like to see that.
Well, yeah, any repair negotiations are out of underwriters' file, but that's a good point. Is any, like sometimes in the agent notes, it'll say like roof is being replaced in 3 weeks, whatever, and you want to make sure that the roof actually gets replaced. Well, don't put that in your other provisions, say seller to replace roof, or, because the lenders will see that and be like, what's wrong with the roof? Like, why? What else is wrong with this house? Is there water damage as a result of this roof? So anything repair related, keep out of your contract. Keep your contract as clean as possible. And then if you want to, write up a separate document, not an addendum. Like, don't call it addendum 1, just a separate document that says seller to replace roof prior to closing. That way everybody can sign and agree to it, but it's not part of your contract. Calling it addendum 1 makes it part of your contract, because the next addendum, maybe that is a price change or something like that because of an appraisal, and you put addendum 2, the lender's going to need to see addendum 1 to know what that was. So it's just a separate document that everybody can sign and agree to prior to inspections or during the contract process. It's just like not part of your contract.
Good question. You mentioned HUD. Amy, Katie, do you guys offer any specific classes that deal with HUD or foreclosures and how to do that?
I think we've had some in the past. Santosh has taught them, because Santosh, prior to coming to Keller Williams, was one of the HUD and Fannie and Freddie guys in town. So he's very well versed in their procedures, and it's something we can put on the calendar in the future again, if it seems like there's some interest for that.
I'd like one.
Mm-hmm.
I encounter people that they often ask, or buyers, they often ask, where do we look for foreclosure homes? Obviously, they're trying to find a home with the best price, and maybe they can get lucky. Any thoughts or feedback, or how to respond?
Soapbox about this. You want me to get up on my soapbox?
Let's do it.
You're in charge.
All right. There's, again, watch your language, because a foreclosure isn't a home. Foreclosure is a process, okay? So what they are looking for are real estate owned properties. So you can't buy a foreclosure, because a foreclosure is the process in which an entity takes an asset back, typically a bank, right? So the first question I always ask anytime somebody is like, well, what about foreclosure homes? I'm like, why is that of interest? And they always say, because I want a deal, right? Foreclosed homes or real estate owned homes aren't necessarily any more of a deal than any other house that's out there, because the bank is going to price them for the condition that they're in. So if it is a $30,000 house in a $100,000 neighborhood, it is because it is probably covered in mold, missing all the copper. It is a dumpster fire of a house, and it's going to need $70,000 worth of work to make it match what is right for the neighborhood, right? So just because it's been foreclosed on doesn't necessarily mean it's a deal. So the banks are going to price them at fair market value. Where are they? Listed with real estate agents. They're on the MLS with every single other property that's available for sale, because banks are not realtors. So they will hire realtors to list their asset on the MLS to sell it. Okay.
So when they find foreclosure homes on Zillow,
Lies.
soapboxes.
Lies.
Or pre-foreclosure. Talk about pre-foreclosures, Katie.
Pre-foreclosure is a lie.
Those are lies. Yeah.
They're just behind on their payments. They were served a lis pending, and they're probably going to catch back up.
Yeah. It does not mean that house will be sold to anybody. It does not mean it will ever be foreclosed upon. Like Amy said, the LP was just served. Zillow saw the recording at the courthouse and deemed it a pre-foreclosure. Those people can come in and catch up their payments. They can do a loan modification. They could possibly sell it to a private investor, and then it never actually gets foreclosed upon. Foreclosed on Zillow means that it might have been sold at auction in the past at some point, but that doesn't mean it's for sale again yet. If it is, it will be on the MLS with an agent. Or it could have gone to a private investor that is keeping it. The only way to get a deal during the foreclosure process is if you go to the auction yourself. And you better be prepared to have at least 2/3 of the appraised value, because banks will come in and bid 2/3 of the appraised value to get rid of the first right of redemption. Everybody remember that one from real estate school? To get rid of the first right of redemption in case there's a homeowner there. So the deals are going to be if somebody's like has a city or tax lien, and you can buy the tax lien at auction, or the better opportunities are going to be the houses that are well maintained, just outdated. So grandma's lived there since 1975, has been really good about cleaning her furnace, has changed her roof every 20 years, you know, but it's got purple shag carpet and avocado green toilets and
brass.
Yeah, brass, so much brass. Shiny wallpaper. Those are your best deals if you're looking for the deal, is to find the well-maintained house in the nice neighborhood that's outdated. But the foreclosed homes are not necessarily the deals, because they will be priced in the condition which they're worth. They'll be priced at fair market value for their condition. I mean, I've seen foreclosed homes in Lake Forest that are priced at $400,000 because they're nice homes in Lake Forest. Somebody just had some bad luck.
And, you know, it's a great way to give your buyers some options in this market. If they can't afford to do those updates themselves, talk to the lender about a 203K. You know, it could be that basically that means they're going to finance in the cost of repairs. And there's a process to it. It's, you know, it's a tedious process, getting estimates and then a follow-up, usually about 6 months. But really, it's better than spending months showing them how they make offers and they keep getting beat out. So if they're willing to take that outdated one, talk to the lender about being able to finance and escrow those repairs.
And make sure your lender is set up to do it, because not all lenders are.
Yeah, is the Streamline still like 35,000 or less? And then if not, it's
I'm not sure. The pros and cons, obviously the pro is you don't have to come out of pocket for repairs and renovations. And it can be literally anything. It can be like, I want to build a garage, but if you don't have the capital to do that on your own, you can finance it in. Now your down payment, you're going to have two appraisals. You're going to have an as-is repair appraisal, and then they'll do an after repair value appraisal to make sure what you want to spend through the bids, through the contractors that you have come out and give bids, are not going to price you out of the neighborhood. And your down payment will be made on the after repair value, because that's going to be what your loan amount is for. So if it's a $200,000 house and you're doing $50,000 worth of renovations, your down payment's based off of $250,000 instead of $200,000. That will be your final loan amount. It does take a little longer, but I mean, I've had clients do it and it's been worth it for them because they didn't have to come out of pocket for the repairs themselves.
Is the DAP still a thing? Like the KHC? Okay, so that's another way that you can offer help to your buyers, is they can actually finance the down payment. And I believe it's a 5-year period, like $60 a month or something. So they're borrowing the money, but the lender's allowing them to do that, or KHC is allowing them to do that. And there's an extra thing. I think they have to take a class online or something about home ownership, which is good for them anyways. But, if a seller had refused to offer the concessions for closing costs, maybe you could use that to finagle it where the money they had set aside for their down payment, they can get borrowed from the DAP program. We call it the DAP. So just talk to your lenders about that too.
Yeah, it does have a slightly higher interest rate, and you do have to repay the DAP. But if it makes sense for your client, it's a program that's out there and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though, if all things are equal, I'm going to pick a conventional loan over a borrowed down payment loan any day of the week, just because it's a stronger product, conventional is. And I will explain that to clients. These two offers are exactly the same with terms, price, everything, but one is putting their own money down and one is borrowing their down payment. It's going to be tough. It's a tougher sell, but it's a great program that's out there. I've got buyers that use it. Take advantage of all the opportunities for home ownership for everybody. Good discussion. What else you got? Now we have 9 minutes for real this time.
Their brains are churning. I see Steve. Hey, Steve, you want to add anything? Maybe he's not even on there. I don't know.
He said he was going to be like in the background recording all of this, and then he just came on like 15 minutes before it ended.
Okay, so I have a quick question.
All right.
So I've got a condo that just opened up, and I've got someone who wants to see it. And this is one of those, 127 condos that are going to go like that. So do I call the agent now to kind of get some information? Because I know by the time we go there and we see it, there's going to be an offer that's going to be written. Or do I call on the way home while I'm writing the offer? Or when do I call the agent?
So it's listed, you're going to go see it. It's probably going to go pretty fast. The call I would make beforehand is, assuming there's nothing written in the agent notes about this. So check.
There is no agent notes. Sorry, but as we were doing this, I was kind of doing that too, looking, and there's zero agent notes.
All right. So then that would be my call, is like, hey, we've got a showing set up for today at 4 o'clock to see your condo at 1, 2,
2 o'clock.
We're going to see your condo. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions prior to our showing. I have a feeling they're going to be interested. Are you reviewing offers at a certain time, or are you presenting them and responding as you receive them?
Okay.
And just kind of learn that information, and then you'll know how, still act very quickly if your folks are interested to get that offer in, but then you'll know, like, well, we received an offer at 11:30 this morning, and I'm presenting that at 4 o'clock. So then you kind of know what you're working with. And then after you leave, call her back again, say, okay, we really love the condo. We're going to make an offer. What do we need to do to write an offer that your seller can't refuse? Had they already identified a place where they're moving to, or do they need a little bit of extra time? And then just kind of work down those questions like we talked about at the beginning. You're welcome. Good luck. What else you got? Anything else?
Did you actually pick out names for your babies?
No, not yet. I got a list going, but I'm not sold on like the order. It's just ones that I kind of like, and so they can mix and match. I'll know when I see them.
Michael is a great name. It comes with great mischievousness. Just know that.
One of our lenders, his name's Eric. He's like, how are little Eric and Erica doing in there? Like, what if they're both girls?
So you don't know the sex of the babies, but you're definitely having twins.
Definitely twins. There's definitely two.
Twins, okay.
Definitely.
And when are you thinking they will be here?
August 31st is their due date.
Okay,
So
possibly
hopefully
sooner.
hopefully they stay cooking in there as long as
Yeah.
possible.
That's right. That's right.
But you never know. They may decide they run out of real estate sooner than that.
Right. Right. All right.
All right. Well, thank you for spending your holiday morning with me today. I'm super, super grateful that we had a pretty well attended class with good discussion. Hopefully
Thank you so much.
you got something from this that you can use to move your business forward. So
Absolutely. Thank you, Katie. We appreciate you.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Enjoy your holiday.
Thank you. Happy 4th to everybody.
Yes, happy Fourth.
Be safe out there.
All right.